Hey, it's Lawrence Sher. I'm the cinematographer from Apex, and I'm on Cinepod, the cinematography podcast. I'm like, I can't even hike into this space to scout it and then hike out. And we must have walked 20,000 steps that day. I'm not even thinking about right now. I'm going, how do I survive this movie, let alone bring cameras into these environments where I was like, wait, the director just took off and started swimming through a creek and then coming out over rocks, and we're climbing over big rocks and all these things.
This is Cinepod, the cinematography podcast, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. I'm your host, Ilya Friedman, and today on our show, we speak with Lawrence Sher ASC, who returns to the Cinepod for the fourth time. Larry is the cinematographer of Apex, the action thriller currently sitting at number 1 on Netflix. Apex stars Charlize Theron as a woman hunted through the Australian wilderness by a relentless pursuer. And it's one of the most visceral and visually grounded survival thrillers in recent memory. The entire film was shot on location in the Blue Mountains of Australia and is the first feature film ever released to use the revolutionary light reflector, the Betty Luminous Flux 4X. Today we dive into how the extreme remoteness of the locations forced a documentary-inspired toolkit, including the Sony Venice bodies packed into backpacks, lightweight lenses, very few lights, and a skilled drone pilot. Building a visual philosophy around what you can't control, Larry embraced shifting sunlight, unpredictable weather, and inaccessible terrain as creative assets rather than obstacles. Using a documentary grammar framework to justify camera angles and movement, drawing on visual language and climbing films like Solo and The Alpinist. How streaming has changed the cinematographer's relationship to their work. Larry sees Netflix's democratization as a genuine second chance for films that deserve wider audiences. After the interview, stick around for our short ends, our pet obsessions of the week. But first, find out what's going on in the world of entertainment in a segment called Close Focus. Hey there, Ben Rock. It is time for our Close Focus. What is going on in the world of entertainment?
Well, it was something that you brought to my attention, which was a news story that's been going around a bit. It was covered in Variety, covered in Deadline, and it was about, because the Cannes Film Festival is happening basically right now. My friend, producer Alok Mishra, hopped on a plane yesterday and told me he was going to Cannes. You know who's not going to Cannes? Who's not going to Cannes, Ilya? You tell me. Who isn't going to Cannes this year?
It sounds like most of the Hollywood big studio types are not going to Cannes. They have...
and what up with that?
I don't know if it's a official boycott or they just didn't feel like they had stuff to show, but it sounds like the reasons being given run the gauntlet between, oh, this wasn't ready, or oh, this isn't appropriate. And I think there's some people out there calling BS on that. There's some ink being spilled about why Hollywood really isn't at Cannes. And do you want to share some of that with our listeners?
Well, Hollywood, well, first of all, every story you'll ever hear out of Cannes is either that everyone hated the film or that it had a 45-minute standing ovation. There doesn't really seem to be an in-between. And Cannes doesn't have, there aren't that many films that play at Cannes. So I've always wondered, like, why you would have a big Hollywood studio film taking up any space. And granted, they're not in competition usually, so like they're out of competition, so they'll have more screenings. I've never been there myself. But it's that a lot of times what happens is the studios have a project at Cannes and it gets bad reviews or bad buzz, and it poisons the well for them when they want to control the message a little bit later.
Yeah, there's certainly a history of movies that premiered at Cannes, and the reception wasn't exactly what Hollywood wanted. So, and it's an interesting crowd. And it almost to me feels like the studios have just said, to hell with you. It's interesting because I don't know if they're out there shopping or if they're shopping. We'll certainly see, but it's mostly a foreign fare and a few American indie movie affair right now. There's no real representation from U.S. major power players, even not in competition, but just not showing it off as a venue to promote their movies.
Well, I mean, I don't think that there is no question in my mind whether Cannes is, the preeminent, probably most important film festival in the world. I guess the real question is, how much does that information trickle down to the audience out here? If you I'll never understand. The first time I went to Sundance, there were like all these made for Showtime movies that, cause that was a thing back then, that were playing at Sundance. And so, you're there to see independent films. I would say the same thing about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny at Cannes. Why would you show it there unless it's so great that it is like critic proof? There's like only the most acerbic, mean-spirited, nasty human being on earth isn't going to like that movie. And the fact is, I didn't hate the Dial of Destiny, but it's not. I don't feel like it belongs there. It's a gourmet cheeseburger, but it's not. It's not fine art the way I expect stuff at Cannes to be. And Cannes can find fine art like notably things like Barton Fink and Pulp Fiction won the Palme d'Or over the years in the 90s, 30 some years ago. But
yeah, you're right. And Cannes was sort of a bait historically for like the merchant ivory stiff upper lip dramas of Once Upon a Time. And they say that audience though isn't really going to see those movies in the theater anymore. It's now actually a younger generation of people who are getting out there to see things like Marty Supreme and Longlegs and The Materialists. Yeah. So it's like these are
do you think that like that audience has graduated to streaming, and so like where that itch would have been scratched 20 years ago, 30 years ago is now being scratched by things like Bridgerton?
I think you're exactly correct. And I think that's I think that they probably would love a new Merchant Ivory, those fans out there. But yeah, Bridgerton is what they've got in the meantime.
Yeah, I mean, not a downgrade, still great stuff. But yeah, I mean, and I feel like Can also, I mean, like they'll sometimes go a little racy, but it's always like the artiest of art films and what I think of when I think of European filmmaking. And then every once in a while, like a David Cronenberg or somebody will end up being like the main person on the jury. And so, I won't say stuff that's more mainstream. The mainstream is not the point of Cannes, right? Like,
yeah, but it is.
It's the elevated art of it. That's the point of Cannes. So if the studios are skipping out on it, I feel like, can I just tell you my humble opinion about
please.
this?
Yeah,
the studio, like they're just desperately trying to get people to go back to movie theaters, and I feel like some safe bets are being made over the next couple of years. Now, I was telling you before we started recording, I took my son to see Project Hail Mary. It was the second time he'd seen it. He's 8 years old. That movie's 2 hours and 45 minutes long, and he sat there transfixed by it the whole time, and so did I. And I feel like that movie is a big swing. It's a little out of the box. It's not pre-existing IP. I mean, I guess it's pre-existing IP in that it's a book, but Greg Fraser did what he always does, which was reinvent cinematography in a way to make that movie awesome. And you and I saw that movie together, and I remember one of my thoughts was like, if this isn't a big hit, I don't even know what a big hit is. But I feel like the studios need to be focusing more on that kind of stuff. And I feel like that's maybe not the stuff that appeals to the Cannes crowd. I feel like the Cannes crowd is when you already have the audiences coming to the theaters on the regular, which they were pre-COVID, then, you can go artier, and the studios can and should go artier. But for now, and I hate to be so conservative about it, but it's like, just get people back in the freaking theaters, man. Get people back in the habit of going to see stuff on the big screen.
I think you need to give them what they want, though. And I think that there's more and more proof that Hollywood isn't giving people what they want. So I think in some ways it is a potential golden age for the next wave of independence. But the studios have been missing the boat big time.
But also, I'll also say this, that if we take them at their word, which is maybe or maybe not the right thing to do, it could be, like Disclosure Day is one of the movies that's not playing, the new Spielberg movie. And Spielberg's someone who's no stranger to Cannes, and I'm sure he wants to play Cannes.
Of course.
But they said Disclosure Day is not ready. And The Odyssey, I didn't see a statement from the studio about the Odyssey, but the Odyssey seems also like the kind of thing that would play there. But also, I would not be surprised if the Odyssey is just not ready yet. Looks awesome. Can't wait to see it. I don't think that playing Cannes or not playing Cannes is going to affect the box office of that movie one way or the other.
I don't think it'll affect either movie, but there is something about the buzz from that early audience and the length of time for that standing ovation, which people always talk about.
It always sounds ridiculous. I mean, can you imagine being in a 20-minute standing ovation for anything? Like, oh my God.
And you know,
it sounds like the audience is forced to perform a standing ovation at Cannes every year for every movie. And it's like, come on, nothing on earth deserves a 20-minute standing ovation. If Kurt Cobain rose from the dead and did a new Nirvana performance, I would give him a 20-minute standing ovation. Short of that, nothing gets a 20-minute standing ovation for me. 3 minutes into the standing ovation of any standing ovation, I'm like, can I sit down now, please? Okay, can we be done? Like, yeah, I liked it. I liked it enough that I stood up. Do I need to do this for another 17 minutes? Thank you very much.
As I recall, too, it was like Megalopolis got a 4-minute standing ovation at Cannes. And, it was a really polarizing movie. It had very polarizing...
yes, that's a good way to describe Megalopolis.
Very polarizing reviews and opinions, but...
Well, look, we had Mihai on the show, and I think Mihai is awesome. And that movie was... definitely a head scratcher for me.
Well, anyway, it's like it's hard to say sometimes what Cannes will do. I mean, my understanding is before Megalopolis showed at Cannes, Francis Ford Coppola got a standing ovation just for entering the room. Like when he entered the room, like everyone stood up. And it was a whole thing.
He's a legend. He's one of the best to ever do it. I mean, like, yeah, I would give him a standing ovation. I would not give him a 20-minute standing ovation.
Yeah. Well, Ben, anyway, Cannes is an interesting conundrum, and insofar as that it is the number one preeminent festival in the world, and Hollywood doesn't seem to really understand how to actually promote.
Hollywood post-COVID is still, I think, piece by piece putting itself back together and examining every piece and saying, where does this fit into our business model today? In a world of streaming, in a world where TikTok is a thing, and in all of this stuff, and I think it's fair for them to debate whether or not Cannes is a necessary stop on the journey of their big films. But if you're Steven Spielberg, Paul Thomas Anderson, you're one of those people who would play Cannes. If I had a film that had the potential to play Cannes, of course I would want to do that. Like it's probably the biggest honor you can have as a filmmaker, really.
Yeah, it's next to an Oscar for sure. Well,
for sure,
Ben, I don't think there's any more that we really need to get into about this. So why don't we get to the interview now with Larry Sher?
Let's do it.
I'm joined now by returning champion Lawrence Sher. Hey, welcome back to the show. I don't know how many times you've been on, but you were just on recently for The Bride, and I'm so happy to have you back to talk about Apex, which is now in its second week as #1 on Netflix. Congratulations.
Thank you. Great to be back. I love this show.
I'm so glad you're back too, because I really like this movie. It's really good, and it's getting some really good critical reviews. So not only is it popular, people are really, responding to it. It's got to be gratifying to know that people are connecting with your work.
Absolutely. I really like this movie. One of the fun things about the film was it afforded me opportunities to just do something in a genre, but also in its sort of place and its sort of just like essence that was different than anything I'd done before. It's a thriller that takes place in nature. So inherently it was like, oh, okay, we're basically making a day exterior movie with only 2 characters with a very simple premise and setup. And I was like, well, that I really appreciate. Like, I really appreciate something that is it really, really clean and really visceral and has the and gave me an opportunity to basically just shoot in nature for the entire movie. And so I was really excited making it, and really it was one of the great challenges of my career, but also one of the most fun movies to make. And I love that people like it. I really like it. I think it's a fun ride. It feels like an old school thriller that you would see, back in the 90s and 2000s in all the best ways.
I've got this idea that what really separates cinematographers from other people who work in camera crafts or shoot for a living is that they have a visual philosophy. And I feel like everything that I've sort of seen and read and experienced from Apex, I definitely felt like you had a visual philosophy going into this and maintained it through various machinations through the production. So how did you want the audience to feel rather than just see this movie? Because I definitely felt like you said, visceral. I feel like there's a lot of feelings that you get from what's happening on the screen. What was, is this question bunk or is this legit? How do you feel about this?
Totally,
Yeah.
totally legit, but
Yeah.
it comes with so many um depths of like you as a cinematographer, you're obviously the conduit of the director, and you're also the conduit of the screenplay, and so all these things are going to shape all those decisions of like what's the visual language of this movie, what's the sort of overarching philosophy visually. It's certainly something you think about all the time, but also in my experience, and certainly with this director, Baltasar Kormákur, who's fantastic and has done a lot of these kind of movies that take place with like in nature with people trying to survival and kind of like man or woman against nature kind of movies. He's a real expert in it, from Everest Adrift to Beast and The Deep and all these other movies. So this is kind of his forte. You're building it, but you're also building it as you make it. And so what I like to go to, because this is usually my first step in just attacking a movie and thinking about a movie, is what am I scared of? What are the challenges? And then and sometimes, the movie will reverse engineer some things as well in terms of your style. And
Sure.
that was the case with this movie as well. So first things first, okay, it's all in nature. So I knew I was going to have to come up with some Zen-like philosophy as to like what you can't control. Day exterior, I think, is the worst and most hardest thing for a cinematographer to deal with because the sun is always moving, thank God, or we'd spin violently off this planet. And so that's something you can't control. Now, yes, you could control it, massive silks and all these things, but that's then you go, okay, can I do that? And in Apex, we had two climbing walls that stood in for like a lot of the sort of close-up work, although Charlize and Theron did a lot of stuff in practical locations, much of the movie, most of it, I would say, in which, yes, we do have to do things like a massive 60 by silk from a construction crane because we need to control the sun over 12 hours when in essence the movie takes place over, an hour, right? Or whatever time that is. And so, yes, we have the ability to do that in a parking lot. But where we were shooting most of the movie, we didn't even have the ability to bring much equipment at all. So that's going to inform the philosophy and the visual language, right? That's now enforcing it on you, right?
Yeah, it's a limit. It's a limitation, though. It seems like you really embraced because,
Of
yeah,
course. And the idea that I'm not going to control clouds coming in and sun, and yet the movie takes place effectively in real time over 2 days, 30 hours or something. Um, and so that's something where it's like, okay, this is a big challenge. The first time I landed in Australia where we shot the movie, we went on a scout in which I knew I wasn't in good shape, but where I was like, this is a problem. I'm like, I can't even hike into this space to scout it and then hike out. And we must have walked 20,000 steps that day. And I'm like, I'm not even thinking about right now. I'm going, how do I survive this movie, let alone bring cameras into these environments where I was like, wait, the director just took off and started swimming through a creek and then coming out over rocks, and we're climbing over big rocks and all these things. And and it even came before that. The first thing I did on this movie after taking it and getting hired was me and the director. We went to Yosemite because originally the opening of the movie was going to take place in Yosemite. So I was like, great, I'm going to bring a Venice and I'm going to go shoot some stuff because even if we don't shoot it in Yosemite or we shoot some of it in Yosemite, I wanted to just get a feel for like the way sunlight's hitting it. So when we build a wall, I have this like really tangible reference point. And we had this incredible, probably one of the most world-class climbers in history, Beth Rodden, who was like our guide. So she's
Mm.
sitting in a low, we'd meet her and she's like, "Oh, let's just go walk to the base of the, of like the where climbing starts." That walk, which was not even considered like a hike to her, was like mountain climbing to me.
Yeah.
And I brought it like a dummy. I bring a freaking Venice and a set of sticks, and I'm like, and I'm like going over boulders that are twice the size of me, and I'm slipping and sliding down it. And at the same time, I'm doing this and like struggling with every step. I see one of her friends just like pass us, and he's bounding down like a gazelle, as if like this is like the easiest walk. And she was basically going, "Oh, this isn't even part of it." And I'm sweating and struggling, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this movie. Anyway, so
Did you
all
get a
that
personal trainer? How did
first thing, I like beyond the visual language, essentially the big thing is like, okay, I just want this to feel like a real visceral, like the premise of going into the woods, running into somebody who effectively says, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to give you a 5 minute head start. Go."
Yeah.
To me is great.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just like, okay, can we make this exciting and visceral and try to feel like we are putting ourselves in Charlize's shoes and that we can make it kind of thrilling in the most basic, definition of that word. Um, yeah, so that was the overarching idea. And then also I was scared of particularly the things that we knew we'd have to then complement what we could do real,
Yeah.
like the climbing wall, and
Ha-
could we
ha-
make it feel
the same.
authentic? Because, ever since Free Solo, which really I think brought an average person like myself into the climbing world, and now we see this incredible imagery that they did in that movie, and it's of course a documentary, so it's all real.
You
How
know,
could we do that? How could we somewhat try to go after something that could feel authentic to climbers and other people like that?
I, just hearing you describe what you had to go through and knowing that you're in Australia, which is like home to like many of the most deadly spiders in the entire world. I'm assuming your safety meetings, like starting each day, were like, maybe an hour before the hike even into location, because it's been pretty well reported about how you guys had to hike and, carry in all this gear into places where, and then I assume there must have been ADs with like anti-venom and stuff and people talking about like, hey, whatever you do, don't go over the,
The
yeah.
crazy thing about Australia, and I've been here now because I'm doing another film right now that we start shooting next week, is yes, everything can kill you, but they really don't want to kill you. And so you don't run into them. The entirety of Apex, one green snake, which is totally not venomous, super playful. That's the only one we ever saw. We did see one venomous snake swimming in the sort of like river that we
Mm,
shot in. And I
yeah.
remember thinking, okay, well, nobody should tell Charlize because it was like, you're like, these things can swim. Now, with that said, in the entirety of time, now we're also like, 25, 30 people making a lot of noise, which they just run off.
Mm,
But the other thing is like the eastern brown, which is like the second most dangerous snake in the world, perhaps,
yeah.
next to like the taipan or whatever, which I think is the one that's in the movie. But the eastern brown is the most innocuous looking snake. It's just like a brown snake. It doesn't have crazy stripes or anything to like key you off.
Warn you. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But there is no anti-venom.
Oh,
You buy a
geez.
snake kit in Australia, and I learned this. It's just like it's a wrap, like a surgical wrap, and all it is like that makes it a snake hit is it tells you with like these marking on the wrap how much pressure to put on. And then they tell you if you get bitten by, like say, an Eastern brown, just don't do anything
Mm,
because you don't want the venom to get through your body, which is insane. So you're like, okay, let's just say you got bitten by a snake. They go basically go just basically just zen out. I don't know, just like lie down, don't move. And I'm like, who the fuck is gonna not move? You know that the second most venomous snake in your anyway.
Well, that's
One
a
last thing about that.
yeah.
I'm the house I live in Australia. We're like, now it's like, oh, we're in areas with like land and I now have to contend with things I never thought, like all the killing things that'll kill you. And me and my daughter, we saw a snake like 10 feet from our house. And I remember I'm like, oh, what is that snake? And we bring out a little chart, Google it, and it's like all the snakes in Australia. And there's a section of like venomous, and we're both like, I'm like, what do you think it looked like? And she's like, that one. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like it looked like that one too. And then she's like 8, and she's like, what does highly venomous mean? And I'm like, oh Jesus. I'm like, well, maybe it wasn't that one. Maybe it was this one. I start going to like the non-venomous, but of course it was. And that's when I found out all this stuff about snake bite kits and stuff like that. And they're basically, no, there's no anti-venom. I thought there would be too.
Wow. Okay, so you're out with what sounds like to be a relatively light crew of physically fit people who are hauling gear out into the middle of nowhere.
Except for me. I
Except,
got more physically fit, thank God. But yes, the Australians are very physically fit.
and then you guys would do your day, and then you have like you're wrapping. So, and I have to imagine you probably don't want to be hiking out in the dark. So you're trying to like make it all happen during the day, and then
Exactly
get
that.
out.
You're
Okay.
trying to beat it. We shot mostly in the summer, so we had longer daylight hours, thankfully. But yes, we were trying to beat the night, and we didn't always, and we would have like the path that we would walk out of these places, which was often 30, 45 minutes of like real hiking, like exhausted hiking, particularly after a long day. And we that's why we shot with those super lightweight lenses. Like basically we were like, okay, the mini Rialto is going to be amazing for this because not only is it small, obviously the Venice, so we basically packed Venice bodies into backpacks. There were a bunch of like all our camera assistants and ourselves, we'd all have backpacks with equipment. And then we had some basically Sherpas, PAs that would carry stuff in and out. Um, but I was like, well, what could we use? So we're not going to have dollies, of course, and sticks don't really provide us with much. But if I want to move the camera, so we found like the RS4, DJI RS4 gimbal, which is effectively for DSLRs. It has maybe a 4 kilo or 5 kilo max payload.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like, okay, the Mini Rialto made that amazing. And then it's like, okay, we need basically lenses that are no more than a kilo or so, maybe 1.4 kilos. So that was like reverse engineering lenses that could fit into that and close focus, which is always important to me, and they fit the bill for that. So we'd have 6 lenses or 7 lenses in a backpack, and these like really lightweight zooms that we could also use on the RS4. And we could go all the way to like a 200 mil prime and still be on this RS4, which would allow us to stabilize and not have everything be, most was handheld or on this RS4, but also we could move and make, also put it on like a tiny little, like a Rector set crane that my key grip, Greg Tidman found. It was literally like an erector set. It like an accordion that you could put in a backpack and we could put it together and it would even make like a little bit of like it's like not a techno crate, but it was like a little camera move because it was like an accordion. And we use that sometimes because we could literally hike it down into the thing, but we could
Wow.
put it on a little boat or like a float. So we could do some of the stuff in the water with that. So we found tools that we could do with our limited amount of equipment that we could bring into these places. Um, and sometimes because the Australians are really used to going into these areas, they could put infrastructure in like some stuff. It was like this is too dangerous. Like Glenbrook Gorge, which is the final fight they have. They come out of the river and they beat the shit out of each other. Spoiler, breaks his leg, and it's like
Yeah.
before the final climb. That was 45 minutes in, and when we first scouted it, like a dummy, Balt was always like, go to the hardest place to get to. We had scouted that and it was beautiful. And we're like, this is great. And there was like 20 minutes in, it was like really kind of cool, but it didn't feel like it was like where the final climb could happen. So I actually one day went deeper. I just kept going as deep as we could until it basically ran out. And then that's where we found the spot we ended up shooting in. And I'm like, oh, now I'm that guy. I'm now the idiot who's going, let's go to the hardest place to go. And that they were able to put in because just from a safety standpoint, the boulders and stuff with equipment, we were slipping so much that they actually were able to put in a little bit of scaffolding over certain sections to allow us to like do it safely.
So hauling in scaffolding and all that. And I have to, I know you're talking about the ways that you can move the camera and such, but it's been reported that you guys were using a drone in lieu of doing some of these shots. So does that mean you're then also having a drone operator come out with you, or does your regular operator then learn how to fly a drone? How do you guys?
Before Apex, I hated drones because I was like in the mindset of like, we're going to do helicopter work, we're going to establish spaces, we're going to have a helicopter day, a heavy lift drone. Fred North, my favorite pilot, is going to come, we're going to do it like that way. And it's still the way to do it in many, many places.
Sure.
But here it was like one of the first things I did besides like figuring out this RS4 and how we could move the camera and testing it against like the chicken cam, which is the Ronin 4D, and you know, and looking at that, and that was like a big part of like what's the tools that we can bring into these areas, was to test drones. And we had these amazing guys at Heli Guy, and my pilot Brian, who was truly a camera operator. I mean, the amazing thing was the first thing I did was I go, I want to take it out into the woods and I want to treat this like it's a crane, or I want to treat this like it's a steady cam. And what can we do, right? Can we go into the woods? Can I talk you through it the way I would a crane operator? So they had this amazing, you know, appendage to the Inspire, which is these Noto wheels, and they're really beautifully made wheels, remote wheels, just like you would. And I could be on the wheels. I could talk to him about flying through things. And then we tested how physically close we could get to the actors. And once I did that test and realized how good a pilot he was, and I was like, well, yeah, this is now a way to get shots we could not otherwise get, and do things like in tiny little canyons and you know, caves and things, and anywhere we were able to go, we could bring Brian and an Inspire, which can fit into backpackers too. So they basically had, you know, him and his assistant, and they would come in together with basically two backpacks, and we could do that just the same as all the rest of our equipment. And it was amazing because it allowed us to really do things in places where I could get vantage points I could not otherwise get. And the good thing is it also fit into this like thing that I really wanted to be, particularly with the climbing, which was, or even with the kayaking, it was a bit of like, if we were doing this as a documentary, what tools could we use, right? So yeah, they had drones. They're not supposed to have drones in Yosemite, but they had drones because you see it in Free Solo. So that idea that you could have a camera that could like rise up and come over and see the depth, you know, even from the opening shot of Apex or to the like later stuff or in the Norway sequence in the beginning or at the end, I was like, that's okay. That fits within this like idea that this is an angle you would see in the Alpinist or in, you know, Free Solo or these climbing docs. So I was like, okay, that's okay. And then what are the other ways? Well, you'd be hanging from another little perch. You'd be another climber photographing them as well. And sometimes you're another climber on a very long lens, and sometimes you're intimately close. So that helped us go, okay, this is all within the language that is possible if we were doing this for real, you know. And
Yeah.
we were doing it for real, but you know, meaning like more
Like a documentary. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's a really effective tool. I can think of a couple of shots too of like just sort of I was like, how are they doing this? Sort of like skirting just above the water, like during kayaking sequences and
Yes,
stuff like that.
that was a good example of like how can we do this? And that was like the drone being able to sort of fly like you would as like a leading or following vehicle in the water, right?
That was great.
And and you know, because we tried kayak to kayak, and we did that. We put cameras on a kayak and we followed. That's in there somewhere, and we put it on the kayak so you could roll and do that's in the movie. But you know, you have so much, and it's great for like just big energy things, but just to understand the geography of where they are and to follow them and all that, you know, or even when she's just like being dragged in the water behind a thing or that kind of stuff. It was like, okay, the Inspire can be really helpful here.
I kind of want to ask you about there's a shot in the movie where Charlize Sasha hits her head underwater on a rock, and it's a stunt, and it looks really real. And my brain immediately goes to like, okay, so some sort of CG or this or that. But I also know that Charlize loves to do everything herself, very like Tom Cruise, and that this and Balthazar, he's like in there getting like real stuff. How do you pull off that sort of like a gag like that where it's supposed to be taking place underwater and you're like in an underwater housing too? When you see this from like down below. You don't have to give away all your tricks, but how do you do this here?
I mean, in this case, it's an underwater camera in a controlled environment in which we can basically like
Foam rocks.
rotate her really fast, right? So
Yeah.
we tried it where she could physically be in the kayak and we could roll the kayak. And then what we ended up learning is that she could mimic it because she's such a great athlete that like she could mimic it with enough energy and speed and then hit into basically a foam rock underwater.
It's awesome.
Because you have
Yeah.
to do some of those things they're not digestible if you try to capture them in real time in some environment. So you definitely there's a lot of piecing together disparate things in this movie. So much so, and our VFX team on this, Enric and his whole team, are amazing because there are things when I saw the cut for the first time, an early cut, where I couldn't remember where, okay, I know there's some second unit stuff with stunts and there's Charlize for real, of course, most of it. And then there's some stuff that's like in 4 different environments in one sequence of 4 shots, right? From New Zealand to Australia to a tank to like Los Angeles, whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, for like one insert, that kind of thing. We didn't do much, but like, and you're like, all those things had to fit together, as seamlessly as possible. And I'm glad that for the most part,
You pulled it off. Yeah, it works really well. Okay, so Jill Bogdanovich, colorist, of course, mentioned in another interview that Balthazar really likes natural things that look natural and high contrast. Of course, natural and high contrast don't always go together. So, how do you thread that needle? How do you I'm sure was it the same thing on set? Was he saying I want it natural and I want contrast, or yeah?
Well, we like I do with all my movies and with Jill, we just basically did a little testing early on. We went out to the woods, shot some stuff, and then created a LUT that then becomes the LUT for the whole movie. And within that, we sort of found that sweet spot of exactly what that was. So that LUT just had some contrast built in. It was meant to sort of again be fairly, but it has a point of view. It's like we wanted to make it a bit warmer. We knew we were shooting in a warm environment. The sort of like mundanity of just the green and knowing that we were in environments with like, we wanted the opening to be sort of cool and blue and then move to this sort of warmer environment in which it's sort of unforgiving and the heat and all the stuff that we were dealing with for real. But most of that's just built into the LUT. And then like any director, he's got, of course, a vision and opinions about the look, and together we just like find it with me, Balt, with the testing, and Jill. And that LUT kind of stuck for the whole movie, and similarly to like building the LUT I'm doing another movie with Paul right now.
I think that one of the most interesting things about Apex is that it's this vast sort of like open wilderness, but at the same time, it feels claustrophobic. I'm wondering if that's a conversation that you and Balt had, or like trying to you've kind of got all this space, but it also feels often like she can't run anywhere. She can't get anywhere. She's kind of really limited in her things. How I'm wondering how much of the conversation between you and Balt and trying to figure out how these sequences are going to be was being claustrophobic part of the whole plan.
Yeah, particularly in certain sections, like once he starts basically chasing her, because as you said, she has the entire Blue Mountains kind of the run and hide. But because he's so skilled as a hunter, and it's also his background, I mean, literally, it's like his playground, right? It's like he knows it better than anyone. He's at such an advantage that it's kind of that like relentlessness that is so claustrophobic. It's that, I remember in Butch and Sundance, which was one of my favorite movies, growing up, and I just really watched that movie a bunch, is there's like they're being pursued by these men on horseback, and they're on horseback, and they're like way out in front. And it's a sequence that comes before, they go to Mexico or Bolivia or whatever it is. But they're way out in front, but they just keep going. And then they'll like look back and they'll see deep in the horizon, like a trail of horse, like dust. And it's like, fuck, they're still there. And they'd go some more and then they'd look again and they'd be like, they're still there. It's like no matter where they went, this thing just kept following them. And how effective that was for me watching Butch and Sundance of like, yeah, they are in the vastest landscape. And even though they're kilometers away from each other, it's like they can't they just this thing's relentless, and that's what it was, for this movie. It's like Taron will not give up, and it's like he's so good that it's like for him it's a game, because she's running like hell, she's going in and out of water, she's coming out of water, and yet he's just basically always one step ahead of her, and kind of controlling it. So I think that adds to the claustrophobia, because like you said, she could be all the way in the Blue Mountains, and still he feels like he's just on top of her the whole time.
Yeah, it's really effective. It's an effective tool for this movie. I was curious. Did you go back and look at like Two Guns and other Baltazar's previous movies before diving into this? Were you?
Yeah, I mean, I watched Everest again. I watched Beast. I remembered Adrift because I really liked it. So I didn't rewatch it, but I remembered it really well. And but I did go back and watch those. Yeah.
He's so prolific. He's been on my radar for a long time because I did a bunch of pre-production work with the late great Oliver Wood back right before Two Guns, and I helped him out with a whole bunch of custom builds and things for that production. But that movie, of course, also had an incredible hit for Netflix. Like, I want to say, even though it came out in 2013, when it came to Netflix in like 2025, it then became like a number one hit for weeks on their schedule, which is kind of interesting and amazing to me, like how Netflix can decide, hey, here is something that is overlooked, and we can use our megaphone to put it in front of people so they can have this this experience that they may have missed. And at the same time, they will also decide like, hey, we're going to put this movie in theaters. I'm curious about your feelings about like this sort of like new era of streaming, and where the projects that you're working on, how they fit into all of this.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, because I think about it a lot and I have conversations with other filmmakers about it. This Apex represented the first film I've ever made that's not for theaters. Meaning, it's the first movie I've made with a streamer. It's like every movie prior to this.
I'm going to interrupt you just because I was going to say, when I was watching this, I was like, why am I watching this at home? Like, this feels like a movie I would see in the theater. It's like, it really felt like
I know,
that.
and
Yeah.
even in IMAX, like it would have been a great movie for IMAX. It still would be. Like it's like it has like the scope, and certainly like we intended to do, and we didn't change anything because we were making it for a smaller, screen, right? I treated the movie exactly the same. And there's a little bit of a bummer that you're like, I remember when I first saw it, the cut, and I went, oh, this really works, and saw the sort of the scope of it, which we knew when we were making it, but when saw it in, because I was timing it in a movie theater, so
Of
I was
course.
watching it in a movie theater,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh yeah, it's kind of a bummer that like they can't just pivot and put this in theaters, because in the same vein as like which was being made in Australia in an adjacent stage at the same time, which was Send Help. It's like, oh, it could have sort of some success potentially like that too. So that's a bit of a bummer, simply because I still love movies for the theater. With that said, what you brought up about the Two Guns thing is something I really appreciate about Netflix, right? And I have a personal relationship to that exact same thing, which is I directed a movie in 2015 called Father Figures, and it didn't do amazing and it didn't get great reviews, but I was super proud of it, and I knew that it could work, and did work because I watched it in so many test screenings and stuff like that. And but when you see like a review score that's not great, it's gonna be a a barrier to people sort of entering into it because they can see that Rotten Tomato score or whatever it is, and it can just sort of stop them in their tracks from buying a ticket and going to the theater. But in when we were making Apex, like right around the time, so a year ago or something, Father Figures went on Netflix. And now what's cool about Netflix is there's no Rotten Tomato score. There's nothing. It's like, in a way, it's like this amazingly democratic way. In one way, it's kind of crazy because you're like, Apex is next to the Hulk Hogan documentaries, next to like,
Real Housewives,
Drive to
whatever.
Survive,
Yes.
next to like some show from the 80s that's now on Netflix. So it is just like the Wild West of like the world's your oyster, watch whatever the hell you want. And they're not necessarily like, pushing one over the other. It's like super democratic. But in the case of like Father Figures, it suddenly like was in the top 10, then it hit top 8, then top 5, then top 3. And I was like, this is amazing. People are now getting to experience Father Figures in the way that I was hoping they would 6, 7 years after it was made. And so much so that literally there were articles. I love the titles is like, why did this Owen Wilson bomb suddenly become a hit on Netflix? Well, partly because it's just treated like, we're not going to tell you, is this movie good or bad? Go judge for yourself. And I fucking love that. And I was beneficiary of it, and because it was an opportunity for my movie to have like a second wind. But I think your thing about Two Guns is a perfect example of that, right? Is that people can rediscover things and have kind of equal footing to sort of judge for themselves, are they into it or
It's really impressive dichotomy to me because Netflix says it's about the home experience, but not always, and they do all kinds of really democratizing ways of like pulling stuff up. The catalog that they have is so huge, and then to be able to have their algorithm say, hey, we think you might like this because you've watched other stuff that's kind of like this, and then sometimes they're absolutely right. I discovered Luther that way. I don't know if you ever saw Luther, but I was like, I'd never heard of Luther, and holy crap, that was amazing. I don't mean to go down this tangent so far here,
no?
but
I think it's a great
but
question because I talk about it all the time of like, is this thing of like, is Netflix killing movies? No, God, no. Of course not. It's literally like making many, many more movies and TV than just about anywhere else in the world. So like, thank God for Netflix in that regard, right? It's changed things because, of course, the model of streaming and being able to have access to these things at home has forced and made every other studio compete and make their own streaming platform. So yes, they changed everything.
You were very kind to invite me out to Australia during Apex to come meet your gaffer, Steve Daly, and pitch him on my reflector system, which is the Betty Luminous reflectors. And not only did he like it, you guys took it for the whole show. And I mean,
Well, and
yeah.
again, because it's like a brand new way of like it, of basically reflecting light from nature and from your artificial lights, whatever you need it for, but in a really beautiful and soft and sort of pleasant way. It was perfect for this movie because we were in a situation in which we weren't bringing big lights down. So it's like how can we reflect the sun and how can we reflect the ambience and all that way in a way that could we could utilize, and even in things like on the climbing wall where it's like we had to get to a spot that was very specific, and how could we get there with your tool? So yeah, it was really great.
That's awesome. Like I have not actually talked to you since then. So was there any scene or sequence in particular that you got to make good use of it for? That it really actually was worth carrying it out into the wild? Yeah.
Exactly. I think it was in a lot of ways it was still very useful when we were on our little whatever, it was a parking lot, because that's where I needed to basically steal light from the real world because I didn't want to bring in too much artificial light, even though we had to have sort of a sun source, but be able to push around that sun source. That's where it became really popular and really, really valuable to us
That's
because
awesome.
we basically built like a huge vortex rig because we wanted something to be like obviously controllable and easy and not a bunch of 18Ks, or a soft sun because of like the ability to be able to dim and change color and all that. So we built this really, Peaches, who's Steve Daly's nickname in Australia. And by the way, Peaches is the most fit person in Australia. So even he, I remember one day before we started like the movie, because we had to bring power into there, and there's like, I would say it's at least a 30 kilo like battery, and he would just walk around the back lot while we were prepping just to like prepare his body to carry this in and out of 45. And he and Taryn would race up that Glenbrook Gorge, which was one of our longest ones. It was 45 minutes each direction,
Wow.
and a beast of a hike too. They would every time it wrapped, they would race out of Glenbrook Gorge together because Taryn was super fit, of course, as well. So
Did they both have the eco flows on their back for that race, or no?
I think it wasn't with the EcoFlow, but or maybe Peaches did, but certainly Taryn didn't.
Yeah,
But
that's
Taryn
what
probably had his backpack worth of whatever his stuff that he brought down into it.
I was going to say, because quite often, when you're working on productions with a cast, they don't necessarily have to do a lot of extra work. But the cast of this project, they had to hike themselves in every day and every night. There was no camping on set. I assume you guys were out every day. So
Every day. And
yeah.
one of the last places we went was a place in the Blue Mountains called the Grand Canyon, right? And it's like that one we had to basically, and this we eventually, the only way we could solve it, because we were like, we can't make the day because it was only one day and we had to get in and out. And that was like the hardest hike out. So I think it was like Netflix was like, it's an 8 hour shoot. No matter what, we will cut you off because we need to make sure that we had to go down, put wetsuits on, swim in. That was only 25 people, including cast, hair, makeup, every department, 25 max. And we swam in very, very deep through a lot of little creeks and waters, over rocks, by and this is Charlize, Taryn, their team, our team, but we were able to drop with a helicopter, like a long lead helicopter drop. We dropped basically a camera in 3 positions. So we went to the farthest position. There was a helicopter drop of equipment. We shot there. That helicopter got packed up. We swam back. So we were making our way back to the front. And literally, like, Netflix safety was there basically counting down the seconds. And every single frame is in the movie, but it's basically the last place was like at 4 or 5 p.m. so we could all get out of there before it got dark. Because that was the hike in the first day of scouting that I went, I mean, what if somebody just can't get out? What do you do? And they're like, we have beat pull that will carry somebody out. I'm like, really? Because that might be me. Do they know I'm 200 plus pounds? But that one, I remember like the end of that day, there was so much like great adrenaline because it was one of the most fun days of the shoot. That had this great picture of me and Charlize at the top and Peaches from when we finished. Because I was like, oh man, not only did I get out of this thing alive, but it wasn't as hard as day one of prep. So at least some of my cardiovascular got better.
Well, it's great. I'm glad you survived. I'm glad that they didn't have to carry you out. I assume you probably felt like you were in really good shape when that job wrapped. So,
It's funny because you could get out of shape really fast. Because, I thought I was definitely in shape. I wish I lost more weight. I don't know how that's because I'm over 50 and I don't know what to do, but I definitely was in better shape than I started by a long shot. So that was good.
you're an entrepreneur yourself. Your company is called Shot Deck. It's used by thousands of people all over the world to help pre-visualize their productions. What's the latest thing with Shot Deck? What do you got going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, we're introducing a bunch of new tools that'll be probably out within a month or two, and just continuing to sort of give the platform more utility to people in all kinds of ways, like as like an educational tool, as a discovery tool. We always were like built it with the idea that it wasn't just like an image database, but it was truly a thing there, which one movie image or one still on the site, either through its keywording or just by the way it's designed, would lead you on like a rabbit hole of tangential shots to suddenly make you discover a film you've never seen before, or an artist you've never seen, or a director, cinematographer, production designer. And so that idea of making even more of a tool for discovery is something that we're really going to sort of supersize and give the users more ability to sort of use the images in ways that I think will be really helpful for them as well. So it's kind of a whole new. It's going to feel like a real, not just a spit and polish, but a bunch of really new, great stuff. So we're excited about that.
Lawrence, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you, coming on the show and talking about Apex. And it's such a great movie, and I'm so glad that the all of the different worlds and planets aligned correctly to make this thing happen, and for us to get to hang out a little bit in Australia. It was great. So and it was great meeting Steve. And when I met him, he was carrying around an EcoFlow on his back. That was
Right. That's right. He was practicing. Well, listen, I appreciate your entrepreneurial spirit. I think in this industry, every day we're faced with sort of looking at things that could be done better and problems that can be solved. That's what makes people that work in this industry so amazing, is we're all great problem solvers. To a person, I'm like, that's the most thing I'm impressed about and I love about all the people we work with. And I love when people are like, there's a problem here. I think I could solve it. And so good on you for doing that with your tool, for sure.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that about Betty. That's really high praise. I really appreciate it. It's getting out into the world. There's some more other people using it now too, which is great. But you're the first. You're the first on a feature film to go take it into the world, which is great. The first thing that people can actually see now too. So I'm very happy. Lawrence, that was it. Thank you so much for being on the show again. Where can people find you online if they want to reach out and get in touch? You do the Instagram, you do the thing?
I still have Instagram, and yeah, that's not a bad place. I still have a website, but I've never updated it, which is lawrencesher.com. But I mean, also just find me at Shot Deck, and check that out as well. So yeah, I'm around.
All right. Well, Larry, thanks so much for being on the show, and I can't wait for you to come on back, with your next project.
You got it. Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks, Elliot.
Hey, that was Lawrence Sher ASC. Thank you so much for being on the show. Always great to have you here, and always great to hear about your process. I can't wait to see your next movie. Thanks again.
What a nice guy too, by the way. Just the nicest.
Really nice guy.
Every time we have him on the show, I'm like, I just want to go hang out with him.
All right, so Ben, it is our short end time of the show. It's a time we talk about our pet obsessions. What are you obsessed about this week?
Well, I am working on a project right about now. I am not a frequent user of After Effects. Some of the recent improvements that they have made in it have made it so user friendly. I have to say that all the tools that they have in there for like tracking and, Mocha AE, Mocha, the After Effects version of Mocha, which has been in there, I think it's been in there for like 10 years. They've gotten so much more responsive and user friendly, but specifically there's an object mat, which is exactly like the one in Premiere Pro, except it has all of the After Effects the Roto Brush tools. Now, the Roto Brush was something that After Effects added, I would say probably 10, 11 years ago, and it was a game changer, but it was a ball-busting game changer because it was so slow and clunky, and it was hard to know what it was doing. But they added the object mat, which basically, like, if I'm looking at the shot of you, if I click on you, it just highlights you. It knows that I'm looking, it can figure out what I'm looking for, and then I can refine it from there. Like, let's say I just wanted your face because I'm just color correcting or doing an effect on your face. I can go in and refine it, and it propagates across the frames really, really fast. And the speed at which this thing propagates, and it's enabled me to, because I'm not a VFX artist, so I'm kind of bumblefucking my way through everything. It's enabled me to iterate a whole lot faster and to try stuff. And this won't surprise you, but I'm adding blood. I'm adding a lot of blood, and I'm adding real blood effects that are like actual practical blood, but they weren't there on the day. And so, there's like keying, green screening. There's a new effect that they added, which you used to be able to buy as a third-party plugin called Unmult, which is if you have an element that's on white or black, it'll just take out the white or the black instantly, and it's as good as a chroma key in a lot of ways. And I'm shocked at how much I've been using that, and that was like something that they added, I think, this year. So I don't know if I'm saying anything that's going to blow anyone's mind, but if you haven't considered After Effects for a while, it's definitely worth a look. If you're using Adobe, then you already have it. You have After Effects, and it integrates really well with Premiere and Photoshop and a lot of the other tools. If you don't have Adobe, then I don't know if you can justify the expense of paying for it monthly, but I think it's pretty badass. So anyway, I don't have anything better than that, but it's what I've been like up to my eyeballs in, is tweaking little blood stuff in After Effects and trying to make it convincing. But not just blood stuff, lots of other stuff. Anyway, that's about it for me. How about you, Ilya? What's your obsession this week?
Friend of the show, Paul Trillo, he came on when we talked to him and his partner at Asteria to talk about AI. AI is constantly in the news, and there was just a commencement speech, actually, which has gone viral the last couple of days, where someone was standing up saying that AI is the next industrial revolution, and then the entire graduating class of 2026 of USF started booing that person, like booing him, not quite off the stage, but it's out there, and it's worth watching. Just because,
I gotta say,
yeah.
Total side note, but like when people make parodies of the moment we're living through, when in 10 years from now someone makes a satire of the 2020s, there's going to be AI in like potted plants and milkshakes and skateboards. Like things that never needed AI are going to have AI in them, because like I mean, look, it might be the next industrial revolution, but it's also the next web, 1.0 bubble. It's such a gold rush. And definitely some people are going to turn out on top in this gold rush, but a lot of people are not. Anyway, please do go on.
Okay, so I bring this up because Paul Trillo, he released...
Nice guy. Super
very nice guy. Released a short film starring a YouTuber named Poppy. She's a singer. She does music videos. She's got about 3 million followers. And he kind of created this Black Mirror sort of esque short, which is... it feels like predominantly live action with visual effects and certain moments enhanced by AI. And I bring this up for a very particular reason, because I think there's a lot of people out there who just believe that AI is going to be you entered a prompt and you watch something, or you entered 100 prompts and that people will watch something. And I really believe that is complete misunderstanding of how AI will be used, and actually how AI has been used for the last 20 years
when we had Paul on the podcast, he disabused us of that idea from their standpoint immediately. That is not what they're there to do.
Exactly right. So what I think is interesting is IndieWire wrote an article about this Poppy AI short film that is now up on YouTube that you can watch, and we'll put a link in the show notes over at Cam Noir. So if you want to read the IndieWire article, where there's also links to the BTS, where you can see AI being used for certain types of visual effects and things, there's still a full cast and crew. This is not I think that this is actually very typically how you will see AI starting to get introduced into, I'm going to say, production, where they're not afraid or ashamed to say that we used AI. I think there's an awful lot of people out there who are going to take a hardline stance and say no AI. But at the same time, this same sort of thing has been going on for decades. So really what's happening now is it's going to be in people's faces. So
I just think you can't say no AI. If Photoshop is used in your workflow, there's probably some AI.
Photoshop, DaVinci Resolve, all of these things have AI sets in them now. So
the object map that I was talking about in After Effects, that is a machine learning kind of a tool. Is it generative?
No,
not in the least. No, it's enabling me to pull the image apart in a novel way faster than I could do it manually. But if you have an anti-AI, I mean,
look, it's
I'm
easy
a broken record on this podcast.
To have
I've said it 1,000 times. It's going to be in visual effects. It accomplishes what VFX do, and it takes depending on how you do it, it takes a fraction of the time to get to photoreal. VFX is it's gonna be just part of all these tools. It's going to be in Blender. It's going to be in Maya, Cinema 4D, Houdini. It's going to be in all those things. It probably already is in all those things.
It probably is. And certainly in the vast majority. But my point to this really, and the point of bringing this up and to drawing people's attention to it, is that the misrepresentation of what AI is going to be for cinema and television just really, really needs to stop. And I'm really sick, especially on LinkedIn, of someone making some I'm just going to say, just complete slop, something really, really terrible that they put out into the world, and then they get an echo chamber of 4 or 5 AI bros to say how cool and awesome that is, when nothing could be further from the truth. I think that if someone wants a real example of the sort of AI road that is being laid out, take a look at Paul Trillo's movie. I think you'll get a much better idea of what it is. You may like it, you may not like it, but it's not going to be that thing that you're seeing online that immediately is turning your stomach. That's not our future.
Well, and I can almost guarantee you that whatever you think of AI in filmmaking is, Paul Trillo is, light years ahead of most people in terms of how much thoughtful thought he's put into it and how much work he's put into it. And he's
100%.
not saying don't work with actors, don't work with cameras. He's saying, use this as a tool. I mean, I feel like to even compare it to this is too extreme to say, like, from going from black and white to color, or maybe going from film to digital, like these were revolutions in the way we made stuff, or when CGI first came into filmmaking in the early 90s. I don't know that AI is going to be as much of a revolution. I think for the most part, it's just going to get you there faster to the same place you were going to go anyway.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's going to do something bonkers and wacky and physically impossible, and that's cool too.
I have trepidation about bringing up AI almost ever now when we're doing the show, because it seems like it's the type of thing all the time, and it's an immediate turnoff. So many people, they hear AI and they immediately turn off. So I think that trying to do my part just to get people to a happy sort of like understanding, and especially actors. I think actors in particular are really, really freaked out, and I think they really don't need to be freaked out, because the stuff that they do, AI cannot do. And the whole idea of emoting and creating an empathetic response with an audience is not something that AI does. So really, I hope that the AI effects that are being used to fix certain problems.
There's a distinct difference, I think, in having AI filmmaking tools versus slop makers.
Yes, exactly right.
We need slop is a distinct category of thoughtless garbage that's made using generative AI that can look photoreal but sucks, and you know it when you see it.
And let me tell you, there's so much of that exists now. I'm so tired of seeing like YouTube ads for someone's hose nozzle that was made in 15 minutes, and quite literally they're trying to sell a $50 hose nozzle. I saw that earlier today. So anyway,
maybe you should stop saying hose nozzle near your phone so often, and it'll stop sending you those ads. But no, I'm with you. I see all these ads on YouTube that are just like pure AI. I even get kind of triggered when I hear the AI voiceover. Because even though it sounds pretty much like what a human voice sounds like, you can tell.
You really want to turn me off to your brand? Use like blatant terrible AI. Use blatant terrible AI, or steal like a huge section from like a movie and then intercut it in with your ad. Like that sort of stuff. Like those brands, I don't support. I don't want to help them in any way. I agree. All right. So Ben, that just about does it for this episode. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
You can find me at benrock.com. And a lot of people have been finding me there and adding me on, finding my other links like LinkedIn or Blue Sky or even Facebook. As long as you're not weird, I'll add you. How about yourself, Ilya? Where can people find you?
You find me over at Hot Rod Cameras, hotrodcameras.com. On Instagram, at Hot Rod Cameras is a good way to track me down as well, too. Ben, who do we have to thank? Who made this show possible?
As always, we have to thank our intrepid, hardworking, and amazing producer/editor, Alana Cody, who is setting up. We have a whole lot of interviews coming up. And a lot of stuff we got to watch. And she's doing an amazing job producing and editing the show. And then we also have to thank our composer, Kays Alexrakshi, who composed all the music that you hear in the show. Check out Kays' website, musicbykays.com. And also, Kays recently launched a company fixing synthesizers. You can bring your synthesizer to Kays, and it's just kayslabs.com, I believe. And Kays will personally fix your synthesizer. It's kind of a pretty interesting thing. But I guess Kays has had that YouTube page fixing synthesizers for a while now, and decided to turn that into a real business. So, hey, if your synth is broken, reach out to Kays.
Kays can fix it. All right, Ben,
Yep.
that is it for this episode. Do you want to take us out?
Thanks for tuning in. This has been Cinepod, the cinematography podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory at hotrodcameras.com. Watch and subscribe to our show on YouTube or listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow and interact with us on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn, but not X. Don't do that. Thanks for tuning in.